Greetings. A main part of the Norwegian government's propaganda is to tell the Norwegian people that they have the best country in the world, that their lives are the best in the world, and that their economy is one of the best in the world. But is this true? Let's find out. Some years ago I had a Fiat Panda. I purchased the Panda because it had 5 seats and it was really cheap, and I had to wait some time before I had an insurance for my UAS. So meanwhile I purchased this Panda. It cost me 500 euros. And for the fun of it, I checked out how much would it cost me to take the Fiat Panda with me and move to Norway. How much would I have to pay in taxes to import the Panda to Norway? It was around 20 or maybe 25,000 euros to import a Fiat Panda to Norway that cost me 500 euros. Of course this is ludicrous. Who would import a 500 euro car and pay 25,000 euro tax for it? It's just ridiculous. But the problem is, in Norway, pretty much everything is like that. Everything you buy has been taxed to death. I'll give you an example. In Norway, I had to pay, I think it was around 25 euros for 1 kilogram of bacon. Here in France, I pay around 0.79 euro for 200 grams. So, rounded off, you pay around 6 times as much for bacon in Norway than you do here in France. But do Norwegians earn 6 times the money compared to the people here in France? No, they don't. So even though you maybe earn 2 times as much in Norway, or even 3 times, you don't. But let's imagine if you did. You still have not the same buying power as people living in France. Of course, the example with bacon is not really representative in the sense that not everything is 6 times as expensive, but everything is more expensive. I think the only exception is diapers. Diapers are more cheap in Norway than here in France. And the government has to subsidize bread because, you know, ordinary Norwegians, they can't afford living. So, you know, to ensure that they don't starve, they subsidize a type of bread. Yeah, that's what they do in Norway. They subsidize, and they have to subsidize bread in order for people not to starve. But Norway is the best country in the world, isn't it? It's the most rich, everybody have the best living standard and so forth. Well, that's bullshit. So, if you walk and eat the subsidized bread only, then you can survive in Norway. And, you know, work and pay taxes, be a good slave. Norwegians, they have more buying power if they go abroad. But when they live in Norway, they don't. They probably have less buying power than others, because everything is so much more expensive. And also, if you live in Norway, you are taxed to death, and much more so than any other country that I know of. Another thing that you have in Norway that you don't have other places is, for example, you have to pay money to use your bank card. If you withdraw money from an ATM, you have to pay for it. If you buy something in a shop, you have to pay every time you use your credit card. And that's not like that. It's not like that elsewhere. Also, you have these toll stations everywhere. And when I drove from France to Norway to record the albums for Bortsum, I had to pay, I think, 3 or 4 times just to get from Sweden and into Oslo. And these toll booths are so normal all over Norway now that you kind of take them for granted, and the people there are used to it, so they don't seem to react, but others do. And it's not like you pay €1 to get past. You have to pay like 12 euros for each of these, and in the end you pay a lot. And you also pay taxes, normal taxes, to maintain the roads. So they just suck the people dry, and they've been doing so for a long time. In the end, the Norwegians, they end up with a pretty poor buying power, and a lot of Norwegians are really, really poor. And another thing the government does is to, for example, they want, Norway is supposed to be a role model for, green environmentalism, blah. So they work to remove old cars. They only want these new modern cars with the best environmental technology in it. Well, sure, but what about young people? How are they going to afford a car if there are no used cars? How are poor people going to afford a car if there are no used cars? The government removes these old cars. They pay people to throw them away instead of selling them to others. And they also have campaigns where they round up all the cars in Norway and they sell them to Africa. Because if you pollute there, that's not a problem to the environment, right? So they want a good environmentalism in Norway, apparently. They don't give a rat's ass about the rest of the world. So they sell these old shit and polluting cars to Africa so that they can have this, show-off model country to boast to the UN. Look how good we are. Well, fuck you. Another thing they have in Norway is like this food mafia. They have a few companies that own all the grocery stores. So when, for example, Lidl tried to establish themselves in Norway, offering really cheap products for the Norwegians, this food mafia conspired against them, and they forced the transport companies to boycott Lidl. So Lidl had to provide their own transport for everything. And of course, in the end, they had no chance. And the result was that there is no Lidl in Norway. Norwegians don't have the opportunity to buy cheap food from Lidl. They have to buy from these food mafia stores, where everything is filthy expensive and of course overpriced. So when I was living in Norway several years ago, if I filled up one, what's it called, a caddy, this roller you bring to the grocery store, I would pay like 3,500 kronas. That would be like at least 400 euros for one. And if I do the same here in France, I will pay like 100 euros. So even though not all products are like 5 or 6 times as expensive in Norway, the overall cost is probably around like 4 times as much. And Norwegians, they don't make 4 times as much as Frenchmen. The income in Norway is not 4 times higher. So all in all, they are better off here in France. Another funny thing that they do in Norway is to register every citizen, and not by name but by number. Just like Auschwitz. You can't do anything using your name. You have to give them your number, because you're just a number. And when you tell people living here in France about this, they will shake their heads and they will not even believe you, because it's so insane. And in Norway it's actually so crazy that every house has a door, and the door has a number, and this number registers everybody who lives there. And again, by numbers, because you're just a number. And another thing they do in Norway that people here in France think is completely crazy is to have a public register of your income. Everybody can just go online and check how much money you earn. So there's no privacy, nobody are allowed to keep anything private. You can just go online, Google any Norwegian and find out exactly how much money they made last year. Another thing I have noticed here in France is the difference between the policemen. In Norway they have all the top-notch gear you can dream of. Leather jackets and bulletproof vests and communication gear and radar in their car and the best cars and so forth. And of course they have guns too, but in the car. They just don't carry it on them. And here in France, no policemen have any of that. They don't have leather jackets, they don't have bulletproof vests, they barely have, they have a gun, but that's it really. And they don't even have radars in their cars. And the cars they drive are like these old crappy cars that not even the ordinary Frenchman drives these old cars, most of them. So it's you kind of get a feeling that Norway is a police state. Soviet model, that is. The final thing I will talk about is lawyers. Because I have experience with lawyers both in France and in Norway. And in Norway, they were walking on like eggshells, scared to death to provoke the authorities, So they, we can't do that, we can't do that. We're not going to push that. No, careful, careful. As if they would get in trouble if they really did their job. But here in France, it's not like that. The lawyers are tough, they're good, and they work for the interests of their clients. They are not afraid of their careers. They are not afraid of being fired for doing a too good job. So maybe I just was really lucky with my lawyer here in France, because I had the top-notch celebrity lawyers in Norway that were supposed to be the best. And compared to this lawyer that the authorities just gave me here in France, those Norwegian lawyers were complete crap. They were not even 10% of the guy that the French government gave me. If you rank the top 3 countries in the world in terms of extreme brainwash, you would probably have like Sweden, North Korea, Norway, or maybe Sweden, Norway, North Korea. Because it is so extreme, it's so totalitarian that my wife, when we moved to Norway, she didn't even want to live there because it was so extreme. And she was used to a socialist France. We had our second son in Norway. We had to sign some papers, official papers, and on it, it said it could be signed by the mother, by the co-mother, or alternatively by the father. It's like, what the fuck? Co-mother? What's a co-mother? Oh, that's of course, the lesbian girlfriend of the mother. And why is that on that paper? Why is it before the father? What the fuck is wrong with them? And the brainwash in Norway starts with kindergarten, which is, pretty much mandatory. And I pity Norwegians. I pity the Norwegian people for being exposed to this type of extremism. And this is not going to end well.